Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aurora IT Partner Spotlight. Shield your business from cyber attacks with Binary Defense. This webinar is being presented today by Binary Defense in partnership with Aurora. And before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded, and we are sending out the slides to all who registered. We will answer questions at the end of the webinar. Please type your questions into the chat box in the GoToWebinar window. Our speakers for today are Mike Johnson, Channel Partner Manager for the West Coast, and Justin Schmidt, our Security Solutions Engineer. And with that, I will be handing it over to Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate the introduction there. So I want to thank everybody that's online for taking time to join this webinar between Binary Defense and Aurora. We're really pleased to be working with Aurora. They're one of our premier partners on the West Coast, and we're excited they've chose us for their kind of vendor spotlight day to day. And we'll talk a little bit more about Binary Defense if you're not familiar with us as we go along. So as she said, the presenters today will be myself, Mike Johnson. I'm the channel manager for the West Coast. And helping me today is Justin Schmidt. He's one of the security solution engineers. He'll help us take a little deeper dive into the presentation. So the agenda today is we're going to talk about cybersecurity risk, industry challenges, why an MSSP, and who is Binary Defense, if you're not familiar with us, Binary Defense Services, and any next steps. So we're going to walk through this morning with just kind of a little animation. We're going to talk about, what is cybersecurity? What are cyber criminals after today? And it really boils down to two things. They're after data and money. Whether you're a small business, medium, or large enterprise, everyone's at risk for a cyber attack. If you think about it, if you've, sure most of us aren't driving to work right now, or we haven't drove to work in a while, but if you're driving to work, you're driving to the store, think of the businesses that you pass. Every one of those businesses is actually at risk for cyber criminals. And in reality, 2 out of 3 of those have already been a victim of that at some time this year. So what's the cost of that? Even if you're a small business, and sometimes what we hear is people think because they're a smaller business, maybe they're less risk. Well, what we're starting to see more and more is you're actually kind of at a higher risk because they see them as an easier target, especially for ransomware. That's what we see right now is being predominantly the thing that's really coming in and kind of shaking the industry up. Is taking, holding that data for ransom. And again, a small company sometimes could be an easier target, less money, but it's a business, and that's what these guys are out after. So what's the cost of that? The average data from Accenture says that if you're a victim of cyber attack, just a small business, the average cost of that's $133,000. And there's 10 days of lost productivity time. And again, that comes from data from Accenture. So what does this put you at risk for? How do we kind of come up with that number? Well, the first thing is your data, right? Is a total loss of data. You either pay to get it back. In some cases, when you pay to get it back, you don't. In some cases, the data, because it's been encrypted, may not get all of it back. So you run that risk of losing that data permanently. You get a financial loss from the ransomware. Whether you pay it or not, you've still got the downtime till you get somebody in to figure out if there's a back door, if there's a way we can get out of it and move on forward. Damages to your company reputation is becoming a big one. A lot of companies really don't want to go back and tell their customers that they've been hacked, and possibly some of the data they have on them has been exposed. So that's another big one. And the other ones is operations. While the attack is going on, you're going to be looking at a total loss of operations and an inability to operate. So what do most companies do? Kind of what we've done for a long time. Antivirus, and most of them have a small IT service group, but those guys really aren't experts in threat hunting and in ransomware and things like that. And what you have to look at is this is more than just somebody sending out a quick bot or a small virus that has a signature that can be caught. These are actual real people on the end of the line working their way through. They certainly understand what antivirus and what the limitations of small ITs are. So they're working around that. They're constantly going around those abilities. So it's going to stop some of them for certain. It's going to help, but as it goes on long term, it's only a matter of time before the gamble hits and that breach hits. So we encourage even our smaller customers, smaller businesses out there to think on a larger scale. And when we say that, what does that mean? Well, it means look at engaging a SOC, Security Operations Center, such as Binary Defense, that acts as a extension of your IT. So we have the technology and we have the service, and that's what we focus on. So we have the people in place that are going to be looking for these hackers. They're going to be looking for people who are trying to get in. We're going to do threat hunting. We're going to do things like place honeypots. We're going to try to deceive those folks. And what you're going to get out of that is 24/7 protection. We have people watching your network 24/7. One of the things that, as we'll talk about later, I think that sets Binary Defense apart is, we rely a lot less on algorithms and AI and things like that. It's real people watching your network 24/7. So what do you get out of that is you get your time back. Your IT people can go back to doing what they need to do, which saves you money. You're not paying overtime. You're not having to expand your staff to do this. And you get the peace of mind and safety knowing that somebody's watching that network 24/7, that are professionals, that are that's what they do. That's what they look for, and they're going to work with you as an extension of that network. So we'll talk a little bit about the guys that started the company. So Dave, this company was started back in 2014 by Mike Valentine. He's our founder and CEO. He's had a great track record of success building businesses and teams. Prior to starting Binary Defense, he was founder and president of a group Transportation Services, a firm that he actually took public in 2010. And Mike co-founded Binary Defense in 2014 after kind of a chance meeting with Dave Kennedy and learning about the current state and evolution of cyber criminals. So when we talk about Dave Kennedy, to defend against attacks, you have to have the mindset of an attacker. So our co-founder, David Kennedy, is one of the world's top hackers. He's worked for various U.S. intelligence agencies. He's regularly invited to speak at security conferences, cybersecurity expert on TV. He knows how to penetrate a network, knows what it looks like, and he knows what it takes to defend against that. Dave also founded our sister company, which you'll hear us talk about a little bit, Trusted Sec, that offers penetration testing and incident response. He's dealt with companies after they've been breached. None of the customers that he had encountered were happy with their MSSPs because the attacks went undetected or for too long, breaches were missed. He's heard numerous complaints about poor communication, turnover, lack of integration between customers and teams, and the service provider. So in 2014, he met with Mike and he wanted to put together a rock solid defense program that they built from the ground up. Took a couple of years to do it. Mike and Dave have brought in some of the best. We have former FBI, former military, law enforcement, IT security specialists with one goal is to offer cybersecurity that goes above and beyond that kind of one size fits all model. We pride ourselves in our team, the quality of service at Binary Defense. You'll be on a first name basis with your SOC analyst. They're going to be a part of your team. They're going to talk to you. They're going to, when shift changes, they're going to tell you about it. It's going to be a really true partnership and working relationship. So protecting your data is, we look at it, we say it here as every minute, every second of every day. We have real people. So if you look at our operations center, it's 100% based out of the U.S. We don't outsource anything. Every SOC analyst that works for us is a Binary Defense badged employee. We're not using temporary people. We're not using people from overseas or from any other area except it's done out of Central Ohio. Threats are real. Our SOC analysts are experts in deception, threat hunting, behavior-based intelligence network to identify these before they happen. And in some instances, if we need to, we contain those, relay back to you what's going on, and work with you for the right solution to do that. It's a 7x24, 365 monitoring. We provide faster investigation, more targeted incident response. And you'll find that as you grow and work with Binary Defense, as we understand your business, it really is that true partnership that we strive to provide. So we suggest whatever you do, if you're looking for the next level of protection, you go to a premium, SOC as a service. So, well, what does that mean? We decide that a premium SOC as a service provider We have a dedicated analyst on each shift that's going to be dedicated to you. They will work with you to customize escalation procedures. How do you want them to go through? Do you want them to go through Aurora? Do they want to come through you? Whatever that looks like. Daily notification shift changes. We're going to send you an email, tell you who's leaving, who's coming on, who the supervisor is going to be. So at any point in time during the day, you know who has eyes on your network. We also provide a 30-minute escalation for critical alerts, and then we'll come to you with dedicated guidelines, recommendations, and then if there's a penetration that takes place, being through SOC 2 compliant, we're going to work with incident response teams to help get that mitigated, to help get it fixed, to help get it back up and running. So our kind of a premier product is managed detection and response. I'm going to let Justin kind of kick in here in a minute, talk a little bit more about it, but that's kind of our bread and butter where you start at monitoring each endpoint, which is going to be, servers, desktops, or laptops. So on this page, we have kind of a picture here of, what the analysts look like, what they're watching on a day-to-day basis. So Justin, you want to take over here?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mike. So our managed detection and response, the reason why this is really the premier offering for our partners like Aurora is because most end clients do not have sufficient visibility on their endpoints. And by endpoint, I mean a desktop, a laptop, or a server. That's where most of the initial breaches are actually occurring, because it's a lot easier for an attacker to craft a fake email that looks like it's coming from one of the C-levels of the organization to try to get into the company, rather than it is to find a vulnerability in software. So a lot of the attackers are going through the path of least resistance, which is often through the human vulnerability. So endpoint detection and response is how we're able to identify threats as early as possible in the attack lifecycle. When you read in the paper about larger organizations having had gone through a breach, a lot of them had taken weeks, if not months, to even determine that a breach had occurred. With our endpoint agent, because that's where breaches are originating under most cases, we're able to detect that threat within minutes instead of weeks or months. So with our agent, it has very rapid deployment. Within usually 48 hours notice, we can be up and running and monitoring an entire organization 24/7, 365. We offer real-time detection. Mike mentioned the human component in our security operations center. While AI and machine learning have come a long way, they are absolutely not even close to being able to replace the human analyst, which is just a lot better at spotting anomalies and learning the intricacies of an organization as we monitor. And that security operations task force, we're not just going to forward an alarm over to your company just because we see something happen, but we're going to do that level 1 analysis and provide recommendations on what should be done. And we actually have the ability to respond as well.
Good. So these are going to be some highlights. Again, I'll let Justin keep running over there he'll talk a little bit about, what is behavior based, what's the advanced threat detection, deception technology, which is one of the things that, we think really sets us apart. They'll go into that, and then our managed containment.
Perfect. So behavior-based detection, traditional antivirus has relied on signatures for a number of decades now, and even a lot of the next-gen antivirus and endpoint protection vendors are not truly detecting based on behavior. So what we mean by that is, if an attack has never been seen before, it's very difficult for those traditional vendors to detect it. However, that's the key foundation of not only our software, but the training that we give our security operations task force analysts in our security operations center as well. So we're looking at strange activity in the enterprise. We want to understand when someone in accounting is accessing like an HR computer for the first time. Should that be occurring? And then we want to investigate that issue, talk to you as the client or the IT team who knows whether that's normal activity or abnormal activity. So that's the way that we detect threats. And we're looking for advanced techniques as well. So we're looking at the way that malware and ransomware operate, which luckily for us on the defensive side hasn't changed significantly in the last couple of years. But ransomware, the effect of it has resonated throughout the industry because companies are losing their data or they're being held for ransom, they're paying that ransom and still, in a lot of cases, not getting their data back in return. So our job is to not only detect threats that have never been seen before, but be able to automatically prevent threats that we do know with a high degree of confidence can be automatically thwarted. Mike talked a little bit about deception. This is something very unique to binary defense. Not a lot of other endpoint solutions, if any, have deception built in. And with deception, we're using honeypotting technology to put information out there that we know adversaries are looking for. So this is really that last line of defense. If there is an adversary that has somehow gotten into your network, or even if it's an insider threat, someone on the inside that is looking to compromise the system because they're a disgruntled employee, or maybe they transfer departments to get access to more information, more of a corporate espionage use cases, we have the ability to put decoys on the network as well. And generally, we're not seeing any false positives here. If there's a sophisticated attacker or an adversary that falls into these deception traps, we know very confidently that that is a potential threat and can move to contain that threat as well. So lastly, that managed containment, that is our ability to remotely contain a workstation or server. So if we do see a threat that wasn't able to be automatically prevented by our software, but we were able to detect it either through our alarms or our human eyes on glass, we still have the ability to put up the wall around that asset. So that piece of ransomware or that threat actor would be cut off from the rest of the network and not able to cause further damage.
Good, thank you, Justin. So we'll move on to one of our other strong areas of expertise, which is SIM services. You know, we do a lot with those, deployment, tuning, monitoring, and again, I'm going to let Justin kick off here in a minute on that. But you know, we see a lot of people that have SIMs, and they're extremely complicated, and you know, they get false errors. They don't know how to get them tuned correctly. So that's an option that we offer is we'll come in, we'll tune it, we'll get it taken care of and turn it back over, or we can actually monitor it. Or if somebody needs to go, especially if you're in the healthcare business, and you're going to have a SIM for HIPAA requirements, we can help deploy that too. So Justin, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So security information and event management is what SIM stands for, and it's a centralized security platform. As organizations grow and scale, thinking from an IT perspective, everything you need in order to open a new office for an organization, or allow remote working from home, which is obviously very prevalent right now with what's going on. All of that takes infrastructure, whether it's the ability to connect remotely, whether you need to spin up information into the cloud, like an AWS or Azure instance. Either way, regardless of whether it's a physical location or just using cloud infrastructure, there's a lot of needs for IT organizations to keep visibility as their organizations grow and change their IT infrastructure. So a SIM is a way for us to pull in all of those various log sources, whether it's an on-premises firewall, whether it's Amazon Web Services and all the security events flowing in and out every time someone accesses that platform or resource and application hosted in the cloud. It's our job to pull that information into a centralized platform, run queries and sophisticated security use cases and algorithms against that data, and then be able to detect whether there's a potential threat or a security breach with that log centralization. So that centralized platform is excellent from anyone to the larger end of the small enterprise spectrum all the way up to medium and large enterprises is what we see for a good organization to start adopting SIM technology. Really, this real-time threat detection is what's important for us. Similar to the endpoint use cases, while we're very focused on the endpoint with our managed endpoint detection response, with the SIM, we get visibility into the network and cloud log sources as well. It's really that combination of technology, people, and process that makes us successful into detecting and preventing potential cyber attack. From a compliance standpoint, this is one very positive side effect of implementing a SIM. We're able to retain log data for 30, 90, or even 365 days, which helps meet a lot of different compliance requirements such as PCI or even HIPAA. For clients that deal with having data on EU citizens, the European side of the fence there. What we have is the ability to help enforce GDPR regulation as well, which is a privacy law recently passed in Europe. It's the ability for us to understand what data we have on a person and the ability for that person to get that data and retain it as well.
Thank you. We'll talk a little bit about the technology agnostic SIM services we provide. We really are experts in that field, and we tend to play with all the big players out there. And I'll let Justin talk a little bit about that.
Perfect. So yeah, we can deploy, tune, or monitor an existing SIM. So what that means is that if you've already invested in SIM technology, such as some of the vendors below, we have the ability to come into a situation where maybe that SIM was not implemented correctly. Maybe it's just producing a ton of alarms and nobody's doing anything with it. Or maybe it's producing such noise that it just needs to be tuned out or redeployed. We have the ability to come in knowing that your organization has already invested in that technology and really come in and make it operational and give it great security visibility to the organization. For those clients who have not yet invested in a SIM, and if it is a good fit for the organization based on the size and any compliance use cases and reporting that they need to see, and obviously threat detection, we have the ability to deploy turnkey SIM solutions as well for a number of the vendors that you see there below. So what that means is we don't necessarily make you use our technology stack, but we're happy to adopt to any security investments that your organization has already made.
Good. Okay, so we're at advanced hacker attack threats, and we'll talk a little bit about it, and maybe Justin wants to add some color, but hackers innovate to evade detection. These are real folks on the end. I mean, this is a business. If you've ever heard any of Dave Kennedy's talks or, been privileged enough to see him talk about it on TV, these guys, it's a real business. There are people overseas that they come to work every day, and that's what they do. Their job is to take a list of companies and hack into them. And they know what the standard securities are, and they try to work around those so there's not an alarm, ultimately getting in without threat for ransomware. And the idea is, used to the early days, you'd get a virus in or something, it immediately. The game now is to get in and just hide there, get into your backups, get into every nook and cranny of your network so you have no way out when they finally alarm and go, okay, we got your data, do you want it back? Justin, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. The attacks have gotten more sophisticated. There is such a thing as ransomware as a service, where if I am a disgruntled ex-employee, but I don't have the chops to be able to do damage to my company that maybe laid me off or something like that, I can just hire very cheaply an organization that will target your organization with ransomware, and there's no way to trace it back to me as an employee. So unfortunately, it's gotten more accessible to carry out a fairly sophisticated attack. So that's why it's just important to be vigilant, to have an organization watching your networks 24/7.
Yeah, agreed. So as part of this, and Justin's talked about it, is we have our threat hunting services where and that's something that really sets us apart. We think it's part of a premier SOC organization is we hunt for new threats. We develop and tune detection rules. So it's not like what we're watching, it's just keeping an eye on it, but we're looking for things. We're finding attacks. We're looking for areas that might be new. Our employees are always on top of the newest, latest, greatest techniques that are out there. They do a deep dive analysis of incidents to uncover the capabilities and severity. But we want to, in the process of that, we want to make sure that we're reducing false positive alarms, because at some point you start to get enough of those, they don't mean anything. So better detection plus better understanding is just going to give you a more efficient security model, and we believe that's what we offer through that. The next topic we're going to talk about a little bit, and I'll let Justin kick into, is our counterintelligence group. We have a really amazing group of people. It's headed up by a guy named Randy Pragman, who was a data scientist, computer scientist for the FBI, who's kind of came in and taken that. We do things like the other two we've talked about, the managed detection response and the SIM, those are kind of proactive. Well, the intel portion of this is really reactive. Our team goes out, they scour the dark web, they're looking for things that don't look right. We offer numerous different types, whether it's for people or whether it's for businesses or things like that. We have a counterintelligence solution that we think can help them out. But I'll let Justin kind of start off with, talk about what is counterintelligence at more of a technical level.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So counterintelligence is, as Mike said, the most proactive service we have. It's a team made up of traditional ex-military and ex-three-letter agency. So these are investigators that are very good at what they do. And their job is to look for targeted mentions and targeted attacks to your organization. So we're actually looking for the name of your company next to key threat words and threat indicators. So what we mean by that is if I mentioned a potential ransomware attack, if I mentioned a cyber attack, or if I'm just someone, like an ex-employee leaving a nasty Glassdoor.com review for your organization, those are the type of things we will pick up with our team, and we will evaluate that, make sure and qualify that it is a credible threat, and then we can escalate to your team with some recommendations on what to do. So that's really what our counterintelligence team is doing. Where our security operations center is looking for threats on your internal network and across your endpoints and cloud infrastructure, the counterintelligence team is really the security operations that's looking at the public space. So they're looking at the internet, the dark net, and social media as well.
Yeah. There we go. Sorry about that. My
that next slide always takes time to build. I don't know why.
Yeah. Getting a little whirly glass here. Okay. Now we'll give it a minute to build. There we go. Perfect. So kind of a three-legged stool on this intel, and I'll kind of hit the high points, so maybe Justin can jump in. But really, the threat information engine. So we're scraping the clear net, dark net, social media. Surprisingly, some of our biggest customers in this area tend to be school systems, looking for active shooters or looking for kids that were selling drugs. And it was on a kind of a side note, when I started with Binary Defense, I spent some time in that area, and I was just kind of amazed at what these guys could find and what they they're true investigators. They were really finding out stuff. They stopped a lot of bad things from happening. The counterintelligence team, as we said earlier, some of the best of the best. We hire people from government agencies, like the FBI and past and present law enforcement officers. So really that team is what kind of sets us apart. And then they can go in and do predictive analysis, attack prediction, threat actors, infiltration, things like that. Justin, you want to hit on that anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to speak a little bit more about the intelligence operations team with the attack prediction. So this team has unprecedented access to a lot of the threat actor groups, not because they're participating in that activity, but because we have the ability to infiltrate those groups, including dark web forums that require, just a lot deeper knowledge of how to get access to that. So we do have unprecedented visibility when it comes to predicting an attack. A lot of the crowdsourced attacks groups out there, basically, they coordinate their information online. And while it's difficult to find, we've set up shadow accounts in a lot of these groups so we can predict the activity that they're going to do. And if any of our clients are targets or potential targets of those vertical industries, let's say, there's a threat actor group that is going after utility companies or energy companies because of some geopolitical ramifications. Those are the type of things that our counterintelligence teams will not only detect, but respond to and alert those organizations that there could be an attack incoming. And the analogy we like to use is, if you were going to the bank tomorrow and you knew you were going to be held up while accessing the ATM, you'd probably want to know about that. You'd probably change your behavior and your activities in order to prevent that potential attack. So that's the service that we're providing here.
Very good, very good. And it breaks down into different security services. We'll ping on a little bit. So it's physical and cyber threats. We're looking for threat actor groups and specific industry threats. Whether it's somebody's going to rob a bank or somebody's going to, try to cyber hijack a bank, whether somebody's mad at somebody and they want to get even. Those are all part of the security services that we roll in. Justin, do you want to add anything on that one?
Yeah, these are our different packages, just to be clear on what the counterintelligence team can look for. And we can look for everything, every mention for an organization, but we also have the ability to look more granular at a specific use case. So for security services, like Mike mentioned, we have the ability to look at the physical security aspect of it. So when there might be a physical attack, like for a retail chain or customer, but also information security related issues like a potential incoming ransomware attack or an insider threat. So security is our first package. Marketing is the next one. So with marketing, we have the ability to look at brand image, potential damaging comments online as well. So I mentioned the Glassdoor review earlier. Companies do a lot of customer support via Twitter and Facebook nowadays. So we have the ability to monitor that activity for potential, malicious activity. If someone is really causing like a doxing type of campaign against the company, or they're trying to start like a boycott campaign against the company for any reason, those are the type of things we'll detect. We'll also be able to alert the company on if there's anything they need to worry about or anything that they should change as far as their public relations are concerned. We could also do a competitive analysis to understand what information is out there about a company's competitor, and provide that information as well. And this isn't anything that's not public information. This is all on the up and up from that perspective. We're only looking on the internet for this information. So marketing is another package. Human resources is another use case we cover with the counterintelligence team. When employers are making maybe a high profile hire, they do a background check. That's very high level. It's going to look at the criminal background check and things and maybe like a credit check, things of that nature. But what we're able to do is look from a social media perspective, if there's anything damaging to the company's reputation. If it is a higher profile hire that they need to know about, we have the ability to look at that type of information as well. On the flip side, if there is like a sexual harassment or an internal company issue that the company is worried about, we can also look into that sort of issue as well. We can apply direct monitoring services as well. If a company is very concerned about a specific threat actor group, we can do a very deep investigation into that group if they're being targeted as well for any sort of physical or cyber threats. We can look at an individual and the public information available to us to investigate whether that individual is a threat to the organization, and so on. And then family services. We actually have clients that are not companies, but actual individuals. These might be individuals that are a little bit higher profile in society. I mean, maybe they have a public following. They could be a public servant in a high profile office, but it's someone that's concerned that they may be targeted for a potential physical or a cyber attack. So we have the ability to monitor that individual or their family to understand their security profile, to understand if there's anything that they're putting out on the internet, like on their social media, that may be a potential threat to them. And then we can also look for individuals that would be threatening to that individual or their family as well. And executive services for those organizations that we have higher profile individuals working for, maybe like a board member, or if we're working with a sporting team that has like a celebrity or a high profile player that they're worried about, potential threat, we have the ability to monitor individuals for a company as well. Very similar to the family monitoring, but we're looking at not only threats to the organization, but threats for individuals of the organization by name as well.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate your help in that. So this gets to the end of it. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to kick it over to Emily. We have some questions. We're also going to hear from Larry Boyd real quick from Aurora. So Emily, I'll kick it over to you.
Absolutely. So some of the questions that we have one here. What are some of the common attacks that are being leveraged?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Emily. I'll take that one. So, the biggest attacks we see right now, again, are focusing on the human components. They're phishing campaigns, which everyone's familiar. Phishing is where, as an attacker, I'm going to go after a human, typically with an email, and get them to click on a malicious link or to authorize some sort of transaction on behalf of that individual. So, as an attacker, it's pretty easy for me to spoof an email address. So it looks like I'm the CEO of the company, and I'm saying, hey, I need you to. Sorry, I'm emailing you from my phone right now, but I need you to buy a bunch of Apple iTunes gift cards and send them over to me as soon as possible because we have a client I'm going to meet and I need them. So a lot of times that'll go right underneath the radar. And a lot of times just doing a simple LinkedIn search, I know exactly what I need to perform a phishing attack, just because there's a lot of information out there. So we see phishing be very prevalent. The other one is obviously ransomware. We mentioned it a number of times today. Ransomware as a service is a pretty good business model. Like Mike said at the beginning of the presentation, it's about companies trying to get access to data or money, and it is very effective at doing both. So what we would recommend for those situations is really 24/7 monitoring, good endpoint detection to spot an early phishing attempt as well, and ransomware activity.
All right. And we'll go over one more before we pass it over to Larry. What is your opinion on antivirus solutions?
Yeah, so antivirus definitely has its place. We have the ability with our solution, Binary Defense MDR, to either replace or augment antivirus. If your company is using a solution that's doing software firewalling and disk encryption and maybe USB hardware protection and a bunch of other features, we're not necessarily going to make you rip that out to do business with us. So we do have the ability to replace a lot of the traditional antivirus softwares out there, but we can augment those as well. We do believe that it is very important to have multiple layers of not only protection but detection in the enterprise. So that's our approach there.
Awesome, thank you. So from here, we will pass it on to Larry Boyd.
Thank you. Hey guys, thanks so much, Justin and Mike. Great presentation. It seems like every time that I listen to this presentation, I learn something new. So I appreciate that. I do want to thank the people who took the time to attend today. We will be sending a link to this presentation. And if you have any questions, please let us know. One of the things I like about binary defense is that no matter how many skilled people we have, we can all use some extra assistance. And we all know it's not a question of if, but when we're going to need that help. Things like stock as a service, managed detection and response, incident response, counterintelligence. They're also important to help us in protecting our organizations these days. So I wanted to thank everyone again and look forward to speaking with you all in the near future.
Thank you, Larry. We're really excited about this partnership and the fact that you guys chose to trust us with your most valued asset, which is your customers. And we do appreciate that. We're looking forward to doing big things and helping out anywhere we can.
Thank you, Mike. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.